Hi there, my name is Jenny, and I'm actually doing the film movement presentation, and mine is about the Hong Kong New Wave. It started around the 1970s, so that's the one I'm choosing to do. So I'm actually gonna mention some of the main creators that actually was in the Hong Kong New Wave. So here we have Yim Ho. He's a Hong Kong director, and he was actually pretty active in the 1980s, and he was also the leader of the Hong Kong New Wave movement. Here we have Patrick Tam Gaming. He's also a Hong Kong film director. He's also a film editor, and he's actually known as the seminal figure of the Hong Kong New Wave. Alan Fung, he's also a film director. He's also known as one of the leaders of the Hong Kong New Wave of around like in the late 1970s and the 1980s. So his type of style filming is influenced by the Italian neorealism. He also uses like personal experience or real life stories as the basics for his films. Next we have is Choi Hark. I think I'm pronouncing that right, sorry. He's a Hong Kong film director, a producer, and a screenwriter. He was also part of the Hong Kong New Wave movement. Um, so I'm going to explain a little bit how this actually kind of began the movement. So most of these directors in the Hong Kong New Wave, they were studied abroad. So like they're in overseas more in the East Eastern, Western. Sorry, I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. Um, More like, in New York or like in the States. So therefore, they wanted to bring some of the westernized to approach into their movies. And the New Wave movement bridges kind of the West and the East, which mostly could only really happen in Hong Kong because of the complicated political history that was between the British um, city for like 177 years. So basically, it's kind of bringing the Western culture into the Asian culture. The movement was to define those who weren't following the status quo and instead wanted to develop the industries with editing techniques and sounds and hot footed productions. So, they're bringing more ideas and new things to come in during this movement. So some of the motivations for the Hong Kong New Wave was that they were actually the directors were open to change. They're understanding the expressions of film as an art instead. They were actually portraying lives of ordinary people against the backdrop of the city, able to engaging with socials and political issues that was like identity, colonialisms, and for justice. It was actually very uncommon for a Chinese household to have a TV set in the 1970s. Um, so that was a big also thing to kind of bring it forward. And the liberal culture of Hong Kong allowed industries to produce films that were less censored than those created in the mainland China. This led the creators to challenge the industry norms, like, kickstarting the Hong Kong New Wave in the 1979. So some of the goals for the movements was the filmmakers, they were actually they're striving to make authentic films. They're willing to take the risks and experiments with the combinations of European styles of filming, which they learned overseas when they were studying abroad. They do aim to tear up the rule book. This is basically what it means is in Hong Kong, there's a culture, and when you're shooting the films, and you have to set traditions where you're basically, set to these rules that you want outside to look at you as this kind of certain image. But this director actually was aiming to break that rule to again bring in the Western films in. They began questioning the standards and the metrics of the local cinemas, venturing to some new possibilities away from what is already popular. So, changing their themes around, which means that they started to shoot around the random locations that felt like it would fit into their ideas. And they were also the first to feature synchronous sounds in the Hong Kong cinema. Again, adding like new techniques, editing techniques where they noticed a lot of people were actually into the slow motion effects. So these are some of the goals that was to help, create this movement. So here are some of the film representatives. Um, so before the new wave, the Hong Kong actually film industry was already known for just kung fu action films. And then Hong Kong had a thriving filmmaking culture that it was the only industry to be able to contest Hollywood at that time, meaning bringing in the westernized into the filmmaking industries. Because the old movies then they were still concentrated of image of a happy modern Hong Kong, meaning they're turning a blind eye to challenges of the colonial society. Capturing the true essence of the city and the colonial problems during those times, the local superstitions would influence plot blueprints with storylines adding the culture festivals and alter the rituals, meaning they were, even though they're making it like more Western, they're still able to add like the Asian cultures and all the stuff that's still around into the films. So films that influenced by the Hong Kong New Wave. So here's one of them, Dangerous Encounters of the First Kind. Director was Choi Hark. This was one of the most notorious films of the Hong Kong New Wave. And it was actually uh banned for its graphic, like the violence and stuff, but it generated a lot of interest, which actually made a box office success when they edit the version, which was released in the 1981. Choi was a documentary filmmaker in New York City 30 years ago, and he actually became a director in Hong Kong in the later years. The quote set by Choi Hart in an interview seems to influence him and his ideas during the new wave. So his quote was, "Coming back to New York City again, I do wish that I could work on a documentary about Asian America history in order to leave a record of our ancestors to relate what they done for us so we can know how to connect history together and so that people can learn from what was created for us in the past and that maybe we can do the same for those in the future." So I believe, uh, with his experience and how he wants to bring the cultures together really influenced this movement. The next film I have up here is Father and Son. Director is Alan Fong. So this film was actually the winner of the Best Film and Best Director at the very first Hong Kong Film Awards. Alan's films are very influenced by personal experience and real life stories. So again, in this film, there was a scene with the fire that was experiments because he was trying to do some entertainment, in his life. And during this scene, it actually came from the director himself, like his own experience. And he also started making films at age of 12. And this is actually one of Alan's most personal work doing this film. The next film I have is Homecoming, directed by Yim Ho. This is actually both a China Hong Kong production. So basically, this film in the new kind of shows a similar, like how different and yet similar lives of the mainlanders are compared to the main woman who visits back in China from Hong Kong. So she's this lady, she moved to Hong Kong and her whole lifestyle revolves around Hong Kong. And going to the mainland is a whole different, society. So like it's a somewhat modern style with the tranquility of primitive agrarian life. So this film has like a gentle, thoughtful narrative style that is revealing rather than judgmental. So it kind of shows the both sides of, the society. And this was actually a really good film. I actually would say that, for someone to believe that, Asian is all just one culture, there's actually many types of living style in each part of Asia. So, it just kind of shows like, you don't want people to be judging you like, oh, they all live the same because they're all the same background, right? So this movie kind of really shows that like, even though they're from the same culture, um, you know, like it's so mainland China's her home, but she moved to Hong Kong. So, you can see like they're raised in different cities. So it kind of just gives you an idea of that just because, we're all come from the same place doesn't mean we grew up the same. So this is a really good film, and this is a very like, it's a very good influence for people to understand, um, that how each life in the cities work. And then that's it. Thank you. And then this is my reference. Thank you. Bye.